Hello, and how are you, my friends? I'm Peter, and here I'm telling you stories about the most interesting European cars of the 80s and 90s. In the previous video, we talked about the first generation of Jaguar XJ, produced from 1968 to 1992. And today I'm going to tell you about the second generation of the XJ, which was made from 1986 to 2003, with two major updates in 1994 and 1997. But before we start, thank you very much for commenting and liking my videos. This is really exciting and helps me to make the videos visible to more people. And additional thanks to my subscribers, I really appreciate your trust. And if you are not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing to stay tuned and not miss new videos. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the car. The development of the second generation of Jaguar XJ, XJ40, started as early as in 1972, just 4 years after the launch of the first generation and 14 years before the car was actually put on the production line. The development was led by Bob Knight, the engineering director of Jaguar, who also was deeply involved in the styling studio of Jaguar. By the way, Bob Knight saved the Jaguar's own engineering team by heavily opposing British Leyland Group when they wanted to cut the costs and concentrate all engineers within the British Leyland owned team only. The design features drawn in 1972 in general were kept until the production. The car became slightly longer and lower than the first series of the XJ, making it look more sportive. Both Jaguar designers and Pininfarina were involved in the development, but most of the really implemented ideas came from the internal design team. The car was almost ready to launch in 1978, but, as my friend Gordon Ramsay likes to say, it was raw, and British Leyland preferred to update the first generation of the XJ by introducing the Series 3 in 1979, and the XJ40 project was postponed with a very uncertain future. Despite the relative popularity of the XJ Series 3, Jaguar was losing a lot of money on its production at the beginning of the 80s. The company was losing 50 million British pounds every year. British Leyland, who owned the Jaguar at the time, tried to cut costs with very specific and direct measures. But for any reason, the assembly workers were not excited about the idea to work overtime without overtime payments. And this led to strikes and decrease in morale, which was reflected in the decrease in assembling quality, making the situation even worse. This could bring the end not only to the XJ40 project, but to Jaguar at all. But at that moment, as in a fairy tale, a fairy godmother appeared in this story. The British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher liked the Jaguar XJ very much, and she helped to save the company. She gave £100 million of taxes paid by working British people to Jaguar, to help them to continue making cool toys for wealthy members of British high society. After this reverse Robin Hood action, she also helped to privatize the Jaguar in 1984, getting rid of the British Leyland's dictate and getting more money from new shareholders. With this money and freedom, and after some unpopular decisions like firing 10,000 workers, Jaguar survived and could continue the development of the XJ40. The car was actually ready in 1984, but Jaguar decided to make an additional series of extensive testing to ensure its quality. They actually made a huge job driving millions of miles in freezing Canada, blazing hot Arizona and Australia, and on English racetracks. There is a very interesting movie about this, I'm going to put the link in the description below. The new car had 25% fewer body parts, was cheaper to make, and was expected to be more robust and extremely reliable after those multi-million miles road tests. This should be a revival of Jaguar as a proudly independent company. Unfortunately, the reality was not that bright at all. Despite all those trials and improved quality inspections, the first year's XJ40s are known as very unreliable cars. Engineering excellence couldn't win over assembling fails and supplier quality issues. The weakest points were electrics and electronics, as well as rust proofing. Jaguar addressed the electrical problems, and the XJ40s made after 1990 are rather reliable cars. But by that moment, Jaguar already lost its money and its independence and was acquired by Ford. The design of XJ40 raised controversial opinions. Although most reviewers and owners liked the overall lines of the car exterior, the rectangular headlights were perceived as something that doesn't belong to Jaguar. Later, the Jaguar returned 4 round headlights on some trim levels of XJ40 and finally came back to them on all next makes of the XJ. The interior still was a summit of comfort and luxury. High-quality handmade real wood panels and leather seats never raised any concerns. Even today, after almost 40 years and hundreds of thousands of miles, most of them are in good condition on the survived cars. The lowest trim level of XJ40 had tweed seats, not leather ones, but most of the XJ40s were bought in higher trims, so most of the cars on the market today have leather interiors. The headliner is a known problem area in all Jaguars of the 80s and 90s, which you can see very often. It has a tendency to come down with time, and it is very difficult to solve this issue. The recommended procedure for this requires the removal of the rear window, but of course there may be some shortcuts. Before 1990, XJ40 had a very cool digital instrumental cluster with the integrated display, named the Vehicle Condition Monitor. Unfortunately, they were famously unreliable and were replaced with normal analog instruments in 1990. The car was still very comfortable and great to drive. The driving experience was even better than in the first generation of the XJ, and it was more modern after getting rid of some bizarre features like double gas tanks. The car became safer as well. It got ABS and later airbags. Jaguar had to remove the glove box to install the passenger airbag, but this was the price of safety. Some American models also had automatic seatbelts, but this feature didn't become very popular. And despite the issues I've talked about, it was a very reliable car considering the engines and transmissions. They can easily make 300,000 miles and more. Actually, most cars that survived until this day and still are in running condition are good cars. This means that all known defects have been repaired already, and the resource of the engine is still enough to enjoy it. So you can buy them with confidence, just make sure that they are running and there is not too much rust. Two engines were available at the launch, both inline 6-cylinder naturally aspirated, 2.9 liter with 150 horsepower and 3.6 liter with 203 horses. No V12 engines were available at that time. Why? Well, there is a legend that when the car was in early development, British Leyland wanted to use the V8 engine and therefore eliminate the whole engine-making division of the Jaguar to save costs. This is the same V8 engine that was installed on many British cars of that era, including the MG RV8, which I have a video about. No surprise that Jaguar engineers, and namely Bob Knight, were not happy about this idea. So, to save the Jaguar's own engine manufacturing, they purposely designed the engine compartment very narrow, making the installation of a V-shaped engine impossible. This worked and Jaguar engines were saved, but this also meant that no V12 engine could be used in the XJ40. So Jaguar had to keep the production of the previous model, Series 3, with a V12 engine in parallel with the new XJ40 until the end of 1992. It is a well-known legend. Is it true? It's difficult to say, but I consider it plausible. By the way, some sources wrongly say that XJ40 never had a V12 engine, and this is not correct. XJ40 got the 6-liter V12 with 318 horsepower at the beginning of 1993, after serious re-engineering of the front part of the car, and it was produced until the model update in 1994. It was some kind of a transitional model between the XJ40 and the next XJ300. And actually it is probably the most reliable XJ40 of all, and definitely the most interesting one. In 1990 the 6-cylinder engines were updated. 2.9 liter was replaced by 3.2 liter with 200 horses, and 3.6 was enlarged to 4 liters with 226 horsepower. All engines were still naturally aspirated. All engines were combined with 4-speed automatic transmissions or 5-speed manual transmissions. Most of the owners preferred the automatic one because of its comfort and resale value. Ironically, the manual ones are more valuable today among car enthusiasts, but it's difficult to find one. The automatic transmission allowed selecting gears manually. To prevent an accidental switch to this mode, the Jaguar used a very unusual J-shaped form of the gear selector track. This became a signature feature of Jaguar cars for the future years. In October of 1994, Jaguar introduced the updated XJ on the same platform under the family name XJ300. It received a huge exterior update led by Jaguar's designer Geoff Lawson. The car returned to the classic front look with the 4 individual round headlights. The almost flat hood of the XJ40 was replaced with a curved one, with visible lines coming to the headlights and surrounding them. Ford, a new owner of Jaguar, carried the design updates very gently with respect to the company's heritage. And it was appreciated by the customers who generally approved the look of the car. There were some opinions that the car was looking too classic and too old, but in general the public liked the car and the sales dynamics was positive. What even more important is the fact that Ford massively invested in the production lines and processes of Jaguar. With £200 million received from Ford, Jaguar installed a fully robotized body welding line, increased the painting quality, and improved a lot of assembling processes. This made XJs more reliable than they have ever been. They still had some electrical issues and issues with the rust. The reason for rusting was not the quality of the metal or painting, but some general engineering mistakes, which led to the accumulation of dirt and moisture in some specific points, like in the wheel arches and lower parts of front fenders. This still was a problem, but the overall quality of the cars improved significantly. The interior stayed almost the same, with some updates in the shape of the seats and reintroducing the glove box. The engines also were the same 6-cylinder 3.2 and 4-liter and 6-cylinder V12. But they received some updates, specifically in the electronic ignition management system, which increased their power by about 10%. The 3.2 engine now had 219 horses, and the 4-liter naturally aspirated engine had 249. The power of the V12 stayed the same 318 horses, but it became lighter and less dirty for gas. But V12 wasn't the most powerful engine anymore. Jaguar installed a supercharger on the 4-liter engine for the sportive XJ trim, and this pumped the power up to 326 horny ponies. This was the first Jaguar's road car with a supercharger ever, and the second one with forced induction after the turbocharged XJ220. This power, in combination with lighter weight than V12, allowed the XJR to accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.9 seconds with manual transmission and 6.6 with the automatic one. The maximal speed was limited at 155 miles per hour or 248 kilometers per hour. By the way, again, almost all XJ of this model line were sold with automatic transmission. V12 engines were paired with the automatic gearbox only, and automatic transmission also was the only option for all XJs on the American market. Even for the sportive XJR, among 6,500 cars produced, only 290 were manual. XJ300 was the last Jaguar XJ with inline 6 and V12 engines. In 1997, after only 3 years of production of the previous model, the new update was introduced, and this car is known as Jaguar XJ308. Why 308? Because all engines that were used on this model were new V8 only. Contrary to popular belief, they were not Ford's engines. Ford actually proposed its engines to Jaguar, but Jaguar engineers decided to use their own developments because they worked smoother, and Ford accepted this. Why V8 at all? Because the most profitable market for Jaguar at that time was the United States, and Americans love V8s, you know this better than me. In any case, the new engines were good. Not as reliable as old good straight 6s, but good. Visually, XJ308 looks almost identical to the previous XJ300, but there were a lot of small changes in details. Actually, 30% of all parts in the car were new. The exterior updates were minimal, touching the form of the parking lights and turn signals, making them oval instead of rectangular. But the interior is very different from the previous model. The unified instrumental cluster gave way to 3 separate wells with indicators in them. The unusual shelf with 3 computer buttons behind the steering wheel disappeared, and the central console with the climate control and entertainment system was seriously updated. 3 engines were available for this model, all V8s and all with the 5-speed automatic transmission only. The first one was a 3.2-liter with 240 horsepower. The second was a 4-liter with a 290 horses, and the third one, for the XJR model, was a supercharged 4-liter engine producing 370 horsepower. This was a real deal. By the way, the same engines were used on Jaguar XK8, which I mentioned in my video about Aston Martin DB7. In the first years of production, these engines had serious problems. The surface of aluminum cylinders was covered with Nicosil coating for protecting them from damage and wear, but Nicosil is very sensitive to the quality of fuel. Low quality gas with high content of sulfur, which was common at that time, destroyed the coating and the engine could die in just a couple of thousand miles. This wasn't a problem of just Jaguars. Many manufacturers experimented with Nicosil at that time and had the same issues: BMW, Porsche, Ducati and Moto Guzzi. Jaguar has replaced the damaged engines with the new updated ones with cast iron cylinder liners, and today this is not an issue anymore. We just don't have high sulfur road legal gas now. So if you are thinking about buying the XJ308 now, this issue should not worry you. If the car works, then either the engine was replaced or never had a Nicosil problem at all. Another known issue with these engines is their plastic timing chain tensioners, which can wear very quickly and must be replaced every 60,000 miles. If you buy in a car, listen to the engine. Any kind of rattling in the front part is a reason to go away. Apart from these issues, XJ308 was quite a reliable car. Jaguar even finally almost solved the issues with the electrics on the XJs. There are some discussions on how true Jaguar these cars are, but they were good cars. And you can buy one now really cheap. Personally, I would go with the first generation Series 3, or with XJ40 V12 of 1993 or 1994, or with XJR version of XJ300 series, and I will probably buy one for myself in the future when I have some free money. But any of the XJs after 1990 are good cars with a slightly better reputation, which makes possible buying them for reasonable money. All cars of the second generation were sold in the United States, and this is a rare case when I think that if you want one, you maybe should look for a car locally instead of importing one. Unless you want something special like a right-hand steering car or an XJR with manual transmission. In the US, you can find now offers for XJ40 or XJ300 on Facebook or Craigslist for as low as $5,000 or even $2,000. But beware, the parts for these cars are very expensive. You can buy a jack for $2,000 and have to invest another $15,000 to make it running. The second generation XJ in good condition will be about $6,000 to $15,000 with a gravity to $7,000 to $9,000, and this is a steal for such a good luxury car. Currently there is no big price difference between XJ40, XJ300 and XJ308, but XJ40 is starting to gain the price because it's becoming classics already. In the UK you will pay from £3,000 to £7,000 for these cars, with some rare V12 examples in excellent condition and low miles for £10,000 to £19,000. In continental Europe the current prices are from €4,000 to €10,000, with some cars in the exceptional state for €15,000 to €20,000. I would not recommend buying these cars sight unseen unless you have someone who can inspect them for you. The main known issue of these cars is rust. So you should take a look or get detailed pictures of the bottom of the car, fenders, wheel arches and places below the windshield and rear window. These cars are rather reliable, but rust is what kills them. And by the way, if you do want to buy Jaguar XJ or any other car from Europe and import it to the United States, I probably can help you with this. We have very good connections, especially in the UK, so we can properly inspect the car before buying. Check out our website for all details by the link in the description under this video. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you own Jaguar XJ40, XJ300 or XJ308, please tell me about your experience. It's always so great to learn real-life impressions from car owners. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. New interesting stories are coming soon. Thank you so much, my friends, and see you next time.